Hey Elliot, what's up?
Not too much. What's up with you, Josh?
We're getting ready to head out of town later this week, and we're going to Camp Fi Rocky Mountain 1.5, and we're trying to get in a couple of episodes here so that we can schedule them while I'm going to be away for an extended break. And we were struggling with topics a little bit and thought we'd come up with just a bunch of random grab bag related topics that we could just bounce off of each other, and maybe it'll make for some interesting content. Who knows?
That's right. And yeah, you're telling me we're going on a trip soon? Uh,
Yeah.
it was almost news to my boss today. She told me to schedule a meeting for early next week, and I said, no,
So are you off all of the week, the entire week?
to work on Friday. I
Oh, okay.
saved an extra day, but I'll be working from home, so could be worse.
Yeah, I guess that's not too bad. These midweek campfires are something that's interesting, and I guess relatively new, at least within the last couple of years. I haven't been to one. I've only been to the weekend camps, so this is kind of cool for those of us that don't have to worry about the day job.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for it as well because, especially, I guess it doesn't make a whole lot of difference in the grand scheme of things right now. My kids aren't in summer camps, and Dawn doesn't have specific events going on right at this exact moment. So every day that ends in Y is pretty much the same around our household at the moment. But
Yeah.
looking forward to it all the same.
Yeah, same here. And I am extending the trip by a little over a week after camp. So I'm gonna slowly make my way up to Montana, and I'm driving the whole way. So I'm actually leaving on the 4th of July. I reserved a room in Goodland, Kansas,
I was going to say,
which
what
is
what God's part of Kansas are you going to end up in?
I'm about as far west as I can get in Kansas, which is that's still a pretty long drive from us here in St. Louis. I think it's about 10 hours or so, just drive time. So I'll stop a couple of times, obviously, along the way. And maybe I'll get out there just in time for nightfall. And who knows, maybe there'll be some fireworks going off in the distance or something.
Yeah, by the time I hit Kansas, I'm just like, okay, or near the end of Kansas, I'm like, all right, it's just time to keep on going. We're going to forge forward into Colorado, but I get it when you're already doing 10 hours of driving.
I considered that, considered making the extra 2 to 3 hours or whatever it would be. But since we have a hotel together the night after, I was like, yeah, I'll just go ahead and stay somewhere that's just a couple hours from whether I was going to pick you up from the airport or we were going to meet somewhere and connect near Golden, where we're going to meet up with some other folks.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
And then, yeah, I don't know if I mentioned it, but I'll be visiting my son in Montana. So I think it's like another 12-hour drive from Colorado Springs up to near Glacier National Park. But I'm going to break that up into several days, and it'll be interesting. This will be the longest road trip that I have ever taken. It'll be the longest time I've been away by myself, the longest time that Lori and I have been away from each other. So a lot of firsts that are coming up over the next couple of weeks for me.
Wow. Yeah, that is a lot of firsts. So I'm sure the whole audience wants to know, what vehicle are you taking on this grand adventure?
Of course, I'm taking my little 2012 Chevy Colorado, and I've spent the last, like, parts of the last 3 days just doing some maintenance to it, making sure that it's roadworthy ready. And I did a couple of just minor repairs, like my one of my headlight assemblies was, I guess it had the seal had cracked or something, so it was letting moisture in and getting all foggy. So I put in some new headlight assemblies and just changed the fluids and did all the things, changed spark plugs, just gave it a tune up, making sure that it's ready and not going to let me down in the middle of Wyoming somewhere.
I'm sure it'll be a great trip, and I know that I had even pondered going on to Montana with you. I'm very envious of going to see Glacier. It is definitely on my bucket list, but I'll make it out there at some point. But I'm sure it'll be a great time to see your son and have a good little trip.
Yeah, maybe we can take this trip together next year, depending on
That's
the
right.
timing.
Yes, indeed.
I was going to mention to you that I just finished reading this book, Retire by 30 by Cody Berman. He's been making the rounds here the last month or so, promoting the book on the podcast. So he's been on, I know, Choose FI, and he was also on Mile High Fi recently. But I remember hearing about Cody years ago, and I hadn't really had much. He hasn't been on my radar in the last several years, but kind of an interesting story how he kind of got introduced to the concept of financial independence when he was really young, like 19 or 20, and he just took a hold of it, and I think attended his first Camp FI when he was like 22 or 23, and just went all in on all the things. And he actually finished college and I think only worked for like 7 months, and realized that working full time for a corporate gig wasn't for him. And he just jumped into side hustles, and I think did something like 30 different side hustles on a variety of different things, and eventually reached financial independence by the time he was 25, which is just unreal. And the way he measured it was he had some rental properties, and his living expenses were low enough at the time that the what he called cash flow fi was that his rental properties were paying for his cost of living. And that was an interesting concept that I kind of took away from that. I don't think I've ever heard it defined that way. He breaks it out. The book is really good. And I retired by 30. Obviously, I'm well past that age, but the intent of it is just for anyone. That's the hook, and it's for anyone to really be able to maybe spend 10 years or so pursuing financial independence. And if you pull the right levers, it's achievable. But it does a really good job of going through some of the simple topics, but also then going a little bit deeper on some of them as well, which I was surprised about. I had bought it because I was going to share it with my daughter, and hopefully maybe she would glean some of the concepts from it. And then I also wanted to read it so that we could talk about it, so she and I could talk about some of those things. Haven't given it to her yet, but that's the next step.
Nice. Yeah, no, I actually took one of Cody's courses on creating various printables in Canva. So that's actually how I learned Canva at one point in time. But I know that's one of his various side hustles that he partakes in. So, yeah, certainly somebody that takes action and obviously benefited himself financially very well, very quickly. Yeah, I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's something, a story that's not uncommon is the math of FI is really not too hard. Is start and you've got a decent savings rate. And in just a decade or so, you'll be there without too much work.
He shares that his story is certainly repeatable, but you don't have to go as aggressively as he did. But I thought it was interesting, his final chapter is called Life in Retirement, and it goes into what you and I have talked about in various conversations over different episodes here, where he talks about his ideal day, and he lists out in time buckets like how he spends his time. So starting out the day at 7 a.m. and concluding at 10 p.m., but he has things like going to the gym, taking walks, having his morning smoothie, Spanish. He spends a couple hours working on some type of business related interest or project before he has lunch, and then has an afternoon walk, which I thought was kind of cool. And then more of the project work or business stuff in the early afternoon, and then another workout. Which he's a pretty fit guy, and he's like, you just look at this stuff and you can tell it's like his number one priority is, or one of his top priorities at least, is fitness. And then he and his wife have dinner together and then spend time in the evenings together, that kind of thing. But it's really not too much different than my life now, and it's not anything extraordinary, but it's like exactly how he wants to live his life. And I think it's really interesting. He's certainly, I think he mentioned on the Choose a Fight podcast that his net worth is like 5 million now, but he's still continuing to explore projects and various business ventures, and some of the things that he started are still continuing strong. Other things he's sunset and over the years. But man, to be at that stage at 30 years old is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, no doubt. To just be able to continue to kind of have that hunger, but at the same time, he is doing things, I think, at the speed that's right for him, right? Is clearly, like you're saying, the things that ring true out of just hearing about his perfect day that are most important to him. Obviously, fitness is a huge component. Still, the business is still a large component of his life, I think. And then just spending time pursuing learning and spending time with the people that matter most to him. I think that's themes that we seem to repeat in what our ideal days really look like. And so that's cool to see somebody else that obviously is already living that life doing the same type of things.
I thought it was really interesting too that just hearing the story of his mom introduced him to the world of financial independence. And I think it was through, I think he had mentioned the 4 Hour Work Week was something that she had given him that book. And then there was something else. It was another book. But I was like, wow, to have a kid that's that hungry and all in and that they take that, all four of my kids, I've been leading by example. I have all these books laying around the house. I wouldn't say I'm an avid reader, but I definitely have made reading a part of my life. All these 5 books and early retirement books that I have, and not a one of them has been like, oh yeah, I want to do this and taking hold of it. Everybody's different, but it's Lexi's kind of getting there where she's has some interest in it. But yeah, to be at that stage that early in life is just it's
Incredible.
amazing. We don't see too much of that.
I and that is a perfect segue into one of the books that I just finished. I just read Nick Maggiulli's The Wealth Ladder. And part of the and I don't remember who gave me the original recommendation, but it was definitely one of the 5 podcasters talked about his books. But the concept was that there's different rungs on a ladder of kind of your net worth progression. And so I think rung one was less than 10,000, and then maybe the next one was up to 20,000, and then it was something akin to level 3 was up to 1 million, and then it was 1 million to 10 million, and so on and so forth, right? And really the major takeaways were that strategies that you employ in each of the different rungs of your life and your quote unquote wealth ladder aren't necessarily the strategies that you're going to employ at a different part. What you did to get you here isn't how you're going to necessarily progress moving forward. And so, like, the example that you just talked about with Cody is, yeah, so he falls in that same, say, net worth ladder that probably you and I fall into, is that net worth ladder of between 1 and 10 million. But the strategy that got us to that level is not the strategy that's going to get you to that next level, which I think the next level was 10 to 100 million. And the ladder with the rung above that was 100 million plus. So if you have aspirations of getting to 10 to 100 million, like it's not the same strategy that got you to $1 million net worth. And one of those that's very interesting that was called out was starting a business. So like Cody, obviously in this very early, that was a strategy that he was going to employ, that, hey, instead of working on for somebody else's business, I'm going to build my own and create these diverse income streams. But really that was a strategy that Nick Maggiulli talked about. That's typically employed in that level 4 ladder of starting a business. And really how, you look at people on the highest rung of the ladder, that's all they did was they started a business They typically sell a business or they join a business that was starting, they got some sort of equity, and then they turned around, bought and sold the business, and did that a few iterations until they finally hit the spot where they're at today. There's not too many examples of individuals that created their very first business and now it's Amazon. Jeff Bezos is a is a unicorn. It's an outlier, but I think, oh, I'm going to blank on his name. What's the guy from Shark Tank that owned the Dallas Mavericks? Mark Cuban. So a perfect example would be Mark Cuban, who developed a business that I think the way that they phrased in the book was something along the lines of something that you're good at, something that you know is needed, and something that you're passionate about. Is you need to find something that intersects at least two of those circles to be able to have really a career that you want. And so starting a business where you have an intersection of two of those circles, hey, maybe it's not something you're super passionate about, but you're good at it and you know that somebody's going to pay you for it. You flip that first business and now you're able to make bigger bets essentially on that next big thing.
Yeah, as you were describing that, I was thinking about my small but mighty real estate business, and it's the way that I had the confidence to get into it and carry it on for this last 10 years was that I felt like it was something that I was interested in and I guess quote unquote passionate about and also good at. So it had that overlapping, whereas some people might look at real estate as just a way to have cash flow. They're not necessarily in there working on the properties, getting their hands dirty, but it's something that I am interested in doing and continue to do. But yeah, that's what I was thinking about as you were. Now, it's not necessarily scalable if I'm the guy that's doing all the hands-on stuff, so I'm not going to get to that next rung in the ladder for sure.
And they talked about that in the book as well, is if you've just created a business that you can't remove yourself from, then all you've done is create yourself a job that, sure, there is benefit to that being your own boss, but at the same time, you're never going to really get to that next level if you are just an employee within your business.
Yeah, I'm well aware of that, and I understand that, even as I know you tease me a little bit about that from time to time. I did pull up my hours spreadsheet that I keep because I know you were teasing me about that. I think it was last week, and I'm like, Elliot, I know it probably seems like I'm doing this stuff nonstop every day because whenever you call me, that's I'm at a house working on something. But I promise you, I track my time religiously, and I'm averaging year to date just over 19 and a half hours per week, and that's with drive time. So I don't think that's too bad. That's part-time work.
To each their own, Josh. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. You know,
I
you
am.
you will be very well versed in knob and tube electricity and replacing some Romex.
Yes, I'm almost finished with that part of the project. I probably won't finish it before our trip here. I'm going to go up there one more day tomorrow. I'm certainly not going to finish all the electric, but I've learned a lot and it's something new and hopefully from a cognitive standpoint, it's also like just continuing to stretch my limits and the learning new things and all that kind of stuff. Working with my hands is good for my long-term health, I think.
That's right. No, I don't mean to tease you. I'm glad that you enjoy it and that you find passion out of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other book that I just started was Bill Bengen's new book on talking about the different levels of what he calls the safe max, which is basically instead of the 4% rule, I think he really makes a point that it's 4.7% now by including additional asset classes or a more diversified portfolio really within your existing asset classes. So I'm not done with that one, but that is what I am currently reading.
I would really like to read that one myself and really from just the standpoint of trying to understand where do I currently sit as far as my invested assets and then what could I do to make it, maybe what tweaks, what levers could I pull to adjust it to where it's closer to that 4.7 as opposed to 4%? Because I think the majority of my invested assets are primarily just in the S&P, maybe a little bit of bonds here and there, but I know it's not to the level of what he has talked about with the 4.7.
Yeah, once I complete it, hopefully I can give more insight.
Do you think that you will take action on what he's prescribing?
It's a good question. I think with, of course, outside or additional gains becomes more complexity, and I have found that I tend to like simplicity. But because I think the number of different investment options he takes it up to is 7 different investment options, which is very different than my, for lack of a better term, one right now. But he also has it split, I think, at 55% equities, 40% bonds, and 5% cash or cash equivalents in treasuries and other things like that. Yeah. Is it worth the 7% or 0.7% return? I don't know. We'll see. I do the simple path to wealth.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. I think just knowing that there are other variables out there, it's good to understand how those all kind of fit together, because I know even Frank Vasquez talks about, what is it, the golden ratio, golden butterfly, all those different funds that he has. And he has a piece of it that is gold, which early on I really dismissed. I was like, why would you hold gold? And I know it's not actual physical gold, but and I'm going to have a hard time explaining it, but I know that it's just adjusting the ratios of what you have so that if that gold were to spike during periods of market decline, then you can roll that back in and have the ability to just make those adjustments throughout the year, or maybe it's just one time per year, so that ultimately your overall withdrawal is, I think in his case, closer to 5% than the 4%.
Yeah, and that's really all it is, right? Is it's different hedges against additional diversification so that, hey, something goes up, you sell that, you buy something that is quote unquote on sale, and you just continue to rebalance. I don't remember the frequency in which Frank is rebalancing his portfolios, if he's doing it monthly or how he's running his different experiments. But yeah, something that I certainly need to dig into a little bit more. Is there anything else in this grab bag episode that we want to talk about?
I'll share one more thing with you real quick. And I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about my sort of challenge with happiness and early retirement, and kind of what's started that whole mindset of just really trying to make sure that I'm aware of my own tendency to sometimes fall back into a grumpier state of mind, was that I was complaining about the weather. And this week has been quite an excessive heat wave here in the St. Louis area, where we're experiencing, I guess, real field temperatures of greater than 100. I think today's high was 96, but of course we have like 70% humidity or whatever, which really makes it feel quite tough outside. But I've taken to heart the things that I've said, and I'm like, I'm just going to persevere. And I've been trying to continue to listen to self-help stuff, and I'm just going to keep a positive mindset and take advantage of this weather. So I've spent that time, like I mentioned at the beginning, working on my truck. I had to, even though I have an AC in my garage, I had to pull it in halfway, so I wasn't able to close the garage door. So no AC. I just had to suck it up. And I've taken a few walks. I've still continued to walk in the morning. And yesterday I actually took one at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon at a park where it was mostly shaded. Saw lots of other people out and about. So I know I'm not the only crazy person that's outside doing something active when it's 100 degrees. And we are adaptable as humans. I believe that. So I feel like I have gotten a bit more acclimated to the temperature, and I don't want to go outside and do something overly strenuous, but I'm still remaining active and taking advantage of the weather and all the things and not complaining about it, I guess, is to put it succinctly. I'm enjoying it, and I'm going out with a smile and not complaining about all the things, Elliot. So still steadfast in that pursuit.
I'll have to join you in this pursuit. Is put a smile on our face, and we'll be two non-grumpy old men.
There you go. That's what it's all about.
That's right.
Happy life.
Happy life.
That's all I
Anything
had.
else? Yeah. I think that's a good spot. Until next time.
Yep. See you later, Elliot.
See you, Josh.